In skill set, what are some skills that overlap when going from animation to comic?
Drawing is like the obvious one, but also composition to an extent can really help.
Arts?
Arcs and poses for sure. There can be varying context depending on how poses are used for one or the other, but in principle, it's the same. Those are the big ones, I would say, overall.
What are some skills that don't overlap when going from animation to comics?
I think the one to get out of the way that's pretty obvious is comics don't move.
That is
So,
true.
yeah, they don't move. So you can't really bring animation over to I mean, you can bring the principles of how designs and arcs and motions work over the comics, but you can't really make them move unless you make fun digital comics where there's like one panel or two.
Little
Like every now
gifts,
and then you'll
right?
see.
It's so nice.
I love when they do that. I love when there's like comics that have like one or two panels that are like animated in little ways. They add a little flair to it. I really dig that. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know. A lot of the similar principles from animation to comics can apply. You just need to tweak how you go about certain things like arcs and composition a little differently going into comics, basically.
Okay, what are some skills that overlap when going from comics to animation?
That overlap from going to comics animation, I would say, drawing foundations again.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would also say, depending on which area of art you go into or animation you go into, attention to detail can help. I don't know so much about the actual animation side of things, but layout, backgrounds, certain composition elements of shots. Attention to detail can really help with animation. I think that is good to keep in mind.
Like perspective and grounding your characters.
Perspective and grounding your characters. Although, as we established before, too much detail can kind of make the animation a little bit too busy and difficult to keep consistent, I feel sometimes, because of just how much work goes into making every frame as detailed as possible under those circumstances. So, but a good general attention to detail for certain things when you're like laying out stuff, I think is really good to bring over to animation from comics.
Very interesting. And what are some skills that don't overlap when you go from comic to animation, if they are?
Um, in animation, particularly, one thing we learned that's very important is like simplification and gestural drawing, which is like how to convey the simplest motions and forms to get like as strong and effective like pose from pose to pose kind of like drawing process as possible. Whereas with like comics, I feel like the important thing is to get the illustrations as well detailed and as nice to look at in still form as possible. In that sense, I think the draftsmanship skill is there and I think translates over pretty well. Except that like you may need to learn a different perspective with how to go about foundationally drawing things in order to get the most out of animation versus general art illustration or high art illustration, for example, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense.
Okay, cool.